Today on the Sane Estate, who is that unmasked humorist? Chicago to Ipswich via Arizona, and managing a charity 5,000 miles away. Welcome to the Sane Estate. Thanks for being with us. We're talking Ipswich, Mass., an historic town with cobblestone charm, salty traditions, and just enough civic dysfunction to keep things interesting. I'm John Woolforth, your curious Sherpa on this podcastic journey that may not go where you'd like, but I can assure you, many words will be said. All right. From clamming to spamming, aging to raging, politics to make you sick, and everything in between, the Sane Estate is all Ipswich, but I digress. Today, I'm joined by Doug Brendel, writer, humorist, humanitarian, and wannabe townie of Ipswich. Me too. You might know Doug from his Outsider columns, which lovingly roast life in Ipswich with just enough satire to make you wonder if he sees a therapist. He's also written novels, stage plays, and, no joke, makes a living writing fundraising letters that actually work. Doug's also the co-founder of New Thing, a nonprofit supporting vulnerable people in Belarus. Let's dig into what makes Doug tick, the writing, the giving, the laughing, and what it really means to be an outsider in a town like Ipswich. Doug, thanks for being with us.
Happy to be with you, John.
Okay, so we know that you're not a native, nor am I. Let's be honest. We're both outcasts in some sense. But you're originally from Chicago, but then somehow you took a wrong turn at Albuquerque, literally ended up in Arizona.
Yeah.
Want to explain how you got here and what the heck's going on when you got here? Then you started this weird Outsider column. How'd this all come to be?
Well, I was in the stinking Sonoran Desert for 24 years in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I've always been involved in churches. That's how I grew up, and so for 15 years I was clergy, and I was called to pastor a little church in Andover, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. That's how I originally came to this area. Fell in love with the area. That didn't work out. I ended up going back to the desert, but my wife and I were both like, we would rather be in New England. And
really?
So for 6 years, we kind of plotted to get back here, and we shopped real estate. We did, window shopping, New England real estate window shopping. And we narrowed our focus, narrowed it. Just finally settled on Ipswich and put all our friends on notice that we'd be moving here on a certain date. And that's what we did. And we needed to wait for our big kids to get out of school because I had already moved them back and forth across the country a couple of times. So that's how we wound up here. And then I wasn't clergy anymore, and I started working on a book called Why I Quit the Church. And when that book came out, Dan McAlpine, the editor of the Ipswich Chronicle, which was the local paper at the time,
right,
wanted to run a story on it, and he and I became acquainted, so that when later he lost reporters in a corporate budget cut, he needed content. I reached out to him and said, if there's any way I can help as a volunteer, I'll be happy to help. And he was like, immediately, give me 500 words a month on life in small town New England from the standpoint of a newcomer. And I was like, 500 words a month? Damn, it takes me 500 words to clear my throat.
Yeah, dude, what's up with that?
And a month, I can go daily, you know?
Yeah.
Because the town is so amusing to me. Growing up in Chicago and then a quarter of a century in Phoenix, which is 2 million people.
Right.
And so it's this metro sprawl experience. And then you come to quaint, quiet, right, beautiful little Ipswich. And so I was in shock in kind of a fun way. And so I started writing about it, and it just came out funny. I didn't intend to be a humorist.
You didn't know you were funny?
Things amuse me here. What can I say?
So you just became a comedian once you showed up in Ipswich?
I've always been interested in comedy, but I didn't think Anyway, so the Outsider became what it is, and that was 530 or 540 columns ago. I mean, it's 13 years or so now.
Wait a minute, I can do the math. 50. Okay, whatever. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's
So-
almost weekly. I've had some periods where I lapsed, but it's pretty much once a week.
Okay.
That
Well,
was a
obviously-
long answer to a short question. Are we done yet?
No,
Is time up?
you'll get your refreshments later. We have some lovely cookies as a parting gift. Well, actually, we don't. Well, okay. So you obviously write a lot of things about Ipswich, and how do you come up with these ideas? Like, what strikes you? What strikes your fancy at any given moment? And on the other side of it is, do you meet people who say, "Hey, Doug, by the way, I got a great story for you"?
Yeah. People are very gracious and forthcoming in their suggestions for material. And, some of those...
I got one about a podcast dude who meets, a humorist.
Yeah, because some glowing reference to the Sane estate. I'll see if I can work it in.
That would be fantastic.
People will suggest stuff, and I sometimes use them, or they send me down, a trail that ends up as a column. But my wife says, and she's my first reader, she's a very good editor. She's also running the theater company and the tour guide program at the Crane Estate, your sister estate.
Yes, I said. We
the
shall
legitimate
not speak of such things.
Crane Estate. But she's really a superb editor and has always been my first reader. When I was clergy, she was first reader for my sermons. And she would typically go to page 5 and draw a line and say, "Start here," because it was just, So she reads my columns. And over these years, she's approved almost everything.
Wow.
But she says that I really only have written 4 columns over and over in different forms, because they're all 4 topics. This is her theory of the Outsider. Wildlife,
Yeah.
Weather, traffic, and
Ah.
what former Ipswich town manager Robin Crosby used to say was my morbid fascination with town government.
Morbid and town government together.
That was
Brings
Robin.
a-
She was
rings a
town
bell.
manager here for 5 years. We're good buddies, and I wrote a lot during those 5 years about town government. Now, not so much, because people are so angry about so much stuff. But
Well, okay, speaking of that, even if you've written 4 stories, there's still 500 plus columns, whatever it is. I'm sure not everyone finds you funny, and I'm sure you probably maybe PO'd some people.
yeah,
What do you think?
once in a while I get hate mail. I think there are probably a lot more people who hate it than actually speak up about hating it.
Really?
But the ones who speak up, I'm always quick to thank them and invite them to lunch. I mean, that's my approach to
Where's
somebody
mine?
who's annoyed with me, is let's do lunch on me. I'd like to get to know the person who has the nerve to say, I think you're a schmuck.
And now you know how we met.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Excuse me. Actually, I have some good friends in town who I initially met because they pushed back on a column. They objected to something I said. One friend who shall remain nameless said, "You're not funny, you're just obnoxious." And I was like, I need to meet this person. Yes.
I can dig it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you're obnoxious.
Well,
That's what I'm
thank you.
trying to say.
That's reassuring.
And consider you've written all those columns, it was inevitable you're going to probably turn some of those into books, right?
Well, I don't know that it was inevitable. It was just, because my ego happens to be so massive. So I took
didn't
the
know that.
first year's worth of columns and I drew cartoons to illustrate them, and are bad cartoons because I'm no artist. And I put them in a book. I mean, now with digital on-demand publishing, you can just print as many books as you want, so you
Right.
don't have to stockpile inventory in your garage. So I printed a few books and threw a party and, sold books. And that was fun. And then the next year I did the same thing. So for a few years, I put columns into books. And then after a while, not so much. I don't know where that, I think it was because those parties got smaller and smaller. And I said, that's a clue.
And the ratio of
This is boring.
expense versus, how many people are actually there, that's also a consideration, right?
So,
I mean, self-publishing isn't cheap, as we know. I mean, you have to pay to get the book printed,
yeah.
for example, right? Well, you've done novels, plays, fundraisers, totally different formats and all of these things.
Yeah.
What itch are you trying to scratch by doing all of these things? And notice I was scratching myself while I said that.
Yeah. Well, I've always written fundraising appeals for nonprofits for a living. I've done that for now 52 years. So it's all I've ever done as my livelihood. Good causes. I was the fundraising writer for the BSO for 6 years, and 6 years, I think, and the MSPCA for a number of years, and food banks, children's hospitals, women's shelters, all kinds of different good causes all over the country, and in some cases overseas. So that's pretty natural for me, and it's a good rhythm for someone with a short attention span, because every 2 hours it's a new project.
Right.
And so that's what I do to put food on the table. And then the column I usually write on Friday afternoon. It's the most fun hour or two of my week, really. It's not even like writing, like when you write for a living, it's your job. But
Sure.
This feels this feels like fun, feels like a hobby. And then I've always been involved in theater since I was a kid in school, and so it was natural to write plays. So a couple of stage comedies came out. I have one in development right now in New Hampshire, and we will open May 13th, 2026 at the Firehouse in Newburyport. A comedy called Things Get Ugly.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
Well, and the twist is it's a two-person play, but the actors swap roles with every performance.
Fascinating.
So, yeah.
Well, it seems to be your penchant. I mean, I have been witness to your previous play, including 2 performers.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Best If Used By.
Yeah.
And it was also at the Firehouse, I believe.
It was. Thank you for mentioning that. That just...
Absolutely. It was a
that
wonderful,
delights me. Yeah.
wonderful exercise in relationships. I mean,
No,
seriously.
the play. I
Yes,
thought maybe you were...
Well, that's another thing altogether. But I mean, the dialogue was I found it intriguing, or like entertaining, interesting. Right, there was a dynamic that was established. I thought it was well done.
Thank you. 2 80-year-old women alone together on stage, going at each other for 70 minutes.
And to be able to do that, again, speaks,
Yeah.
to their talents. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you and Christina started a new thing, right, for Belarus. Yeah. When did that go from a hobby to sort of a passionate mission?
Well, it was the new thing story really goes back to Chernobyl, 1986.
Wow.
Ukrainian nuclear power plant explodes and spews radiation into the atmosphere. Everybody knows that. But here's what people don't realize about Chernobyl. It sits on the Belarusian border. So it's in Ukraine, but the wind was blowing north that whole week. So Belarus got 80% of that radiation, which means 80% of the cancer kids, the leukemia kids, thyroid problem kids. It was a medical disaster of gargantuan proportions. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, the West, America, was finally free to bring in humanitarian aid, plane loads full of methotrexate and other cancer kid drugs and medical supplies and equipment and stuff. And I had a client who took up this cause, and I was trying to raise money for him, and he didn't want to spend any money on a photographer. And we needed photos to show how, because he was bringing plane loads of American volunteers into Belarus and following the aid out into the villages, to the clinics, and
Right.
it was a terrific operation. We had no photographs. And so my wife, Christina, is a photographer. She's an award-winning art photographer, and she volunteered. She loves travel, and she volunteered to go and document America's humanitarian response to the Belarusian medical crisis, and she fell in love with the Belarusian people. And she kept going back year after year with these airlifts and stuff, and she pleaded with me to go with her. And I hate travel.
Yeah,
I mean,
too.
a big commute for me is bedroom to bathroom. So I would always promise to go every year. And then I would, make an excuse. Our kids were little, I have to stay with the kids, whatever. So she went back and forth to Belarus without me for 8 years. And until finally she sort of tricked me into going with her. It's a separate story. But by that time, she had 8 years worth of friends in this country. I mean, it was 8 years of, show us the husband. Where is the husband? So when I got to Belarus, John, I was like a rock star. I was like, what's not to love about this country? But I confronted in person for the first time the need, the
Right.
terrible need there. And I was like, oh, we have to step up. We have to do more. But by this time, the new president of Belarus had come to power.
Yeah.
The man who's still in the office today. And it was
not Yushchenko.
not Lukashenko.
Lukashenko,
is his
yeah.
name, Alexander Lukashenko.
I think I confused him in Ukraine.
It was not, so the environment had shifted. I want to be delicate here in how I say this,
Right.
but it was not feasible for an American to just go camp out and help. So
Correct.
our secret sauce is we're not American. New thing is 501c3, legal and registered under the IRS. Response of the Heart, excuse me, is a Belarusian charity, legal and registered under the Belarusian government. And New Thing is registered with them as a legal donor organization. So we provide 100% of their funding, salaries, benefits, office rent, office supplies, legal, transportation, warehouse, everything. On the US side, we're all volunteer, so 100% of what we raise actually goes into Belarus.
That's fantastic.
Which is very rewarding. And those 6 Belarusians spend their lives bringing tons of humanitarian aid into the country from other countries, legally accounting for it down to the last kopeck of value and following it out to the end user so that it's fully accounted for all the way to the villages and wherever it's used. So it's been, and so this was, we started this just like on a whim, on an emotional moment. And that was 22 years ago.
That's a long time.
22 years ago, New Thing was actually incorporated as a 501c3 here. And we've just kept, we never set out to be, but we are now, as I understand it, the only ongoing nationwide humanitarian aid distribution effort in the Republic of Belarus. Because nobody else, it's not feasible for others to do what we're doing, shall we say.
It's an admirable cause, and it's fantastic that you've been managing to do it this long. Let's hope Lukashenko is not a fan of the Sane estate, because you just gave away the game, buddy.
Actually, I hasten to say that because of how we operate, and we just help Belarusians, we're not selling the American way of life or, bringing in workers or American products or whatever. Mr. Lukashenko's government has given New Thing 4 separate presidential commendations over the course of these 20 years
kidding.
to thank us for our service to the Belarusian people.
That's great.
So it's remarkable for an American charity. And let me just put in a plug. You can find us online at newthing.net. That's our website.
Net.
Yeah, you can see all about it, see the kids we're helping, the homeless people we're helping, people with disabilities we're helping, all over the country. It's very, very
Wonderful.
rewarding work.
I have looked at the site, and I've seen, and I get it. It's definitely something that is a worthwhile cause.
Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. You've mentioned the clergy, and
Yeah.
you've had some experience as a clergyman. And at the same time, you've got this, cynical, dry kind of humor. Maybe not so cynical, but dry. How How do you equate these two things?
Well, I don't know that there's any disconnect between a sense of humor and a sense of the spiritual. I think my emphasis when I was clergy, and from time to time I still do pulpit supply, which is what they call it when a minister has to be away, and they bring in a substitute person. And because I've worked in a bunch of different kinds of churches, I can, go most anywhere and do that. So from time to time I'm still preaching on a Sunday, and I still, even after all these years, try to dig into the aspect of Christ's teachings that help us get through the week. When I was clergy, I told my people welcome to the least important hour of your week, because what we do here in this hour is only to help you get through the other 6 days and 23 hours of your week. It's got to be practical or it's pointless. That was my thesis. Now, not everybody who's involved in the religion business agrees with that, but that was my view. So, human beings are complex individuals, and a faith that makes sense is a faith that's going to apply across the board. It's going to you don't have to be a certain serious type of person or whatever. And I have gotten more cynical over the years.
Really?
Come to think of it. Yeah. So I'm not the person I was when I started out, because I grew up in the evangelical church, and that's the fundamentalist evangelical world. The pastor is kind of like this hero figure, and I grew up as a little kid looking up to that. Was the highest status position in your world. So the idea of longing to become a clergyman was very natural for me. And what I found was running a church was
not all it's cracked up to be.
I don't want to overstate it, but I would put it this way: I was a disaster. It was horrible for me, and even worse for them.
But you've survived. They survived.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it had merit, and it was a great experience for you, and I'm sure you learned a lot from it.
Well,
right?
I did learn a lot, and a lot of what I learned was about what I was just referencing. This: what is the drive in me that makes me want to stand up and lead this church? And I realized there was too much of a status-seeking, kind of ego-driven thing in me that wasn't healthy.
Right.
It needed to be about loving people. And so I'll tell you what really turned the corner for me. I was teaching pastor in a little kind of a startup church in 07, 08. And there was a guy who was feeding homeless people in a park in North Phoenix. He would go out on a Sunday morning or Saturday morning with breakfast burritos he made on his own driveway in a big, and he would take them and just feed people. And this had gotten to be kind of his team of volunteers had grown as the number of homeless people coming to breakfast had grown.
Right.
And he and his team needed to mostly be away over Christmas. And he came to our little church and said, would you guys, because he knew some people in our church, would you guys just come and stand in for us for a couple of weeks and feed the homeless? And I was terrified. I thought homeless people were dangerous. This was but I was teaching pastor in this little church, and the senior pastor was like my boss. He said, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, what? And so we went, and that experience was transformative. I ended up spending 4 years on the street with that group, which spontaneously became a street church without a ministry strategy, without somebody mapping this out and saying, this is what we're going to do. It's like it just grew as you loved people and got involved in their lives and helped them and responded to their problems and stuff and developed relationships. This thing grew until finally there were 200 people gathering on a parking lot.
That's phenomenal.
On Sunday mornings, not just for breakfast, but by this time they had practical teaching from the Bible. That was my role. They had a music group, because some of these homeless people had come from church backgrounds where they wanted, to do singing and hear music, the music of their childhood when they were little. We did weddings, we did funerals, we did hospital visits. I mean, and I saw people's lives change through that work more than I had seen in my conventional churches, where I had pushed life change through this organized church system. And it didn't work as well as just loving people, who they were, where they were, how they were. And that was the last 4 years I spent in Arizona. So when I came here, I was like, I didn't see anybody in Ipswich who looked like the prostitutes and drug addicts and fugitives from the law that I had been dealing with on the streets of Phoenix.
Right.
So I went into a spiritual wilderness and had to rethink who I was, and this is how I came out, which reads cynical about religion.
Well, when you get this kind of experience, it dictates obviously a different mindset.
Yeah.
You've seen things from different perspectives, and that's my theory anyways, that some of that has rubbed off in a way that has maybe changed some of the things you thought over the years.
Yeah.
And everyone's allowed to change.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's a good thing, because I needed to.
But I mean, that being said, you proved a point about homeless people, being that they just need help. And somebody was willing to give them the help, and things got better. I wish other people would learn that lesson, don't you?
Yeah, and it's not cookie cutter. You can't say, well, this is a homeless person, so here's what they need. But if you develop a caring relationship with them, you learn what they need. And sometimes it's a matter of learning what's the gap between what they think they need and what will really help them.
As opposed to just judging them as criminals and kicking them off the street.
It's
not that that's happening anywhere.
It's complicated. But loving people was the key, where I had talked this game for all these years, but hadn't really lived it. And those 4 years on the street taught me the difference between what I was saying and how I was living. And I learned to love people who didn't look like me, didn't act like me, didn't smell like me, and see how that's what I think Jesus was talking about when he said, love the unlovely.
Yeah.
And because then I saw people's lives change. It was like fantastic.
Isn't that just so rewarding? I can imagine. Well, after all of this time now in Ipswich, I know this is your role as the outsider, but do you still feel like you're an outsider? Or is it, have we, not we, because I'm way more an outsider than you.
You're newer than me, yeah. You're what, six years in town?
Almost 8. No, 8 in January,
years.
yeah. Mm-hmm. But that being said, do you feel, I think a lot of people in this town obviously know who you are and love you for what you do. Do you feel you're more accepted, or is this?
Well, I've been wonderfully accepted, except in the way that townies will always remind you, or repeatedly, not always, but repeatedly remind you that you're not a townie. But that's true of people who were born at Beverly Hospital, because cable had closed here in Ipswich, and so unless you were born in a house, you were not born in Ipswich. You were actually born in Beverly or Danvers or someplace.
I didn't know there were ground rules for that.
I mean, some people are really strict about this. So that I think the day will come when we'll have no one left in town who was born in town, because there was no hospital here.
That makes perfect sense.
But
So, technically,
people have been lovely. I mean, to answer your real question, I'll just a greet you on the street kind of community is what we found here, and most people have just been a delight. We've loved our 200-year-old house here every single day, and this quaint charm. There are, I think political issues. There's a tendency to avoid change that sometimes I feel would be healthy for the community, and and people are quick to be really, what's the term? Maybe something like snide in communicating their views on local issues. Maybe snide is too strong of a word, but I have been surprised at how civil discourse is not always
Civil?
It's not always civil. I assumed when I came here, I had this stereotype of the small New England town, and everybody was like still proper, like the painting you see of the colonial era, and the people sit around and have a discussion, and then they come to some wise, thoughtful consensus, and they go forth. And in fact, there's a lot of...
"'Tis my contention, sir."
Yes. The reality is otherwise. It's like people get upset, and they're quick to be, I would say, harsh in their language and the nature of their expressing of their views on subjects. And that was disturbing to confront that, because it shattered my illusions about what Ipswich was, how life was here.
I think in older times was the semantics were more a concern than they are now. But I think the intent and point was the same. People were contentious because everyone has passions, passionately believe things. Now, you've mentioned before about the different things that you're writing, and I understand there's a new thing that you're doing now, not newthing.net, but something called Reckoner Press. Do you want to tell us what that's about?
Yeah, Reckoner Press is at reckonerpress.com. It's RECKONER Press.
A little twisty.
.com. Is snarky political commentary on the news that violates everything I just said about civil discourse. And the reason is, what I observed was that our dear president and that gang in the media have a high level of snark in their communication. I'm trying to be diplomat here, but
I understand what you're saying.
But it's like there's a certain way that Trump and the Trumpies talk to and about us on the left.
You mean demeaning?
And
perhaps this thing.
And I looked at the New York Post, for example, which is a Murdoch publication, and it has these huge screaming tabloid headlines with all these just outrageous like rhymes and turns of phrases in their headlines and all that stuff. And it's extremely biased to the right, unashamedly so, and some would say even racist in its kind of pro-white bias. But then, as a faithful reader of the New Yorker magazine, I was shocked to come across an article, a feature by Vincent Cunningham, who is a superb writer on that staff. And he's
on the New Yorker
brilliant on the New Yorker staff, a brilliant young black New Yorker. And he confessed in this essay his secret addiction to the New York Post.
Really?
And I mean, this guy who's like a very sophisticated writer and I've followed for years, and he tells about how when he was young, when he was little, his mom would whack him if she caught him reading the Post. He would hide it, but he couldn't look away because he was fascinated by the tone, by this outrageous, and
yellow journalism in a sense.
You would call it that, yeah. It would qualify as that. And then within the week, just by coincidence, I guess, Time magazine ran a cover story by Charlotte Alter about her Democrats these days who are like, oh, Trump, and they're all worried and all that stuff. But they're also polite in their language, responding.
Sure.
And she went around and interviewed a bunch of Democratic leaders, most of whom would only speak off the record anonymously because nobody wanted, to be. That's how extreme it was. And her consensus was, or her report was, that the consensus is the Democrats are too polite. Well, this all hit in, hit me in 1 week. And I was like, what the left needs is a New York Post. Somebody who finally will get down at the level of Trump and the Trumpies in terms of communication style. So I just said, I'll try it.
I'm going to do it.
So it's a website. It's usually a post a day. It's some comment on the news, but it has outrageous New York Post style headlines and subheads and snark to beat the band. And the idea, and the one more thing before I shut up about it, is that I grew up, I was born under Eisenhower. I grew up as a Nixon, Reagan, Bush conservative. I mean, so recently that I voted for George W. Bush twice. And, and I harbored secret doubts my entire life about that point of view, but it was what I grew up with. So it was easy to dismiss these doubts, but I harbored them, and it was the ridicule of George W. that pecked away at it pricked my secret doubts and the conscience aspect, until finally he did something where I flopped and said, wait, I have to stop and rethink who I am politically and what I am. And I moved as a result of ridicule chipping away at my secret doubts. And I thought, I can't be the only person on about 36 million registered Republicans who has these secret doubts, and the only way to get through, you can't do it intellectually, you can't, they're not listening to any of that, but if you come up with something so outrageous that they can't look away, there's a chance that you could influence somebody. So that was at least the story I told myself, the rationale that I sold to myself to set up Reckoner Press. And so we've been going since midsummer, and we're getting some feedback from right-wing folks who, send snarky responses, that's a win, because it means they're looking
engaging.
at it. They keep looking at it.
That's right.
And so it feels odd because it's not
your typical type of
my
thing.
preferred. Yeah, I'm an approval seeker. Some would say an approval monger.
Yeah, you're afraid to say
desperate
something
for approval. And so it's out of my comfort zone, but it's an experiment it's like a lab experiment, and I'm hoping that it makes at least a little bit of a difference.
Let's hope so too. I think that there is obviously a lot of concern out there. I think in some ways what is happening now is not about Republican and Democrat, it's about right and wrong. So pointing those types of things out in your own way, I think it's just maybe reinforcing some doubts that people might have.
Yeah. And it's clear to me that logic is not making much of a dent. Appeals to historical values is not making much of a dent. All these theoretical and intellectual, philosophical discussions not making much of a dent. But this is the language that a lot of people are. Anyway, I've said too much.
It's a free.
You said
it's
a lot of words would
here.
be spoken.
That's right. And
I'm trying to carry that load for you.
It is like I said, this is a free forum that we can exchange ideas, thoughts, and again, observations. All of this stuff does impact Ipswich in some way or another. So that is the bottom line, and that's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Well, that was Doug, who has informed us with quite a few different things, for lack of a better term. And now it's time for the lightning round.
Oh no!
Okay, Doug. So I'm going to ask you some completely irrelevant, very serious, possibly stupid questions, and you are asked to answer them. Okay.
All right.
Fair enough. The speed limit on Linebrook Road. Law or suggestion?
The speed limit on Linebrook Road is the law, and on the basis of the law, I feel I'm justified setting up a sniper on my roof to pick off the speeders as they go by my house. Honestly,
It's drastic.
the speed limit, this is not even a term you can use in the realm of reality on Outer Linebrook Road. Once you get past Route 1 on Linebrook, which a lot of townies don't even know it's still Ipswich that far west. I think after Route 1, it's like there be dragons. And people like take off, like, oh, I'm out in the woods now. But the road winds, it's not safe. And so it just makes me berserk with, shall we say, frustration.
I can attest to that, though, because I've been tailgated on Linebrook. As you know, I live near you in Outer Linebrook, and yeah, same idea. And it's just sort of like, what are you doing, dude?
So you could do speed bumps, you could do a toll gate. That would slow people down. But I think snipers is the single most direct solution.
Or the nail belts, It's like you have at the parking garages, It's like you go in, but you can't come out unless you pay. There you go. You meet a version of yourself from a parallel world. Do you steal his jokes or his rhubarb plant?
Well, I don't think I would steal the jokes. That would be a temptation. But a good rhubarb plant.
That's something else.
My rhubarb plant, the rhubarb that we have is growing up behind our garage, which it was there when we got there, and it just keeps coming up every year. My wife makes a wonderful rhubarb pie every year from this little plot of rhubarb. And it's magical rhubarb, John, because as I understand it, rhubarb needs sunshine, and it's in the one place on the property where the sun never shines. It's like, how did this happen? The sun goes all the way around, and the rhubarb's in shade, and it thrives. So I thought, well, we're going to have this forever, but here's the problem. The garage, of all the stuff on my property, the garage is the most wretched, in the worst disrepair. It's literally falling apart. So we are now going to have to take down the garage and put up a new garage, and we're going to lose the rhubarb. The rhubarb cannot be salvaged. I don't know, can you transplant?
Speaking as a gardener, you can.
You can dig it up and move it?
You can definitely move it. It will survive. It's a hardy plant.
Well, I'm glad I'm here today because that's reassuring.
Yes, absolutely. You can even split them up, after they grow for a bit. They're basically a tuber type of plant. I think tuber is.
We're going to have to, because
somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I believe. But one way or another, I've said it is movable. Whether it's a tube, whether it's a root ball or a tuber, either way.
Superb. That's great. That's the best news of the day.
Okay.
There's a future for rhubarb at my house.
So you're given the key. Actually, I should say, yeah. So you're given the key to town government for one day, and you can make one thing change. What is that act of pettiness going to be?
Pettiness. If pettiness is the category, then one act is not enough.
Okay.
But
let's go there.
At the moment, what's on everybody's mind is the insanely wrong decision that the select board made to just ignore the millions of dollars that we could have taken from the state to put a traffic light at 5 corners and reconfigure that deadly intersection.
Well, that didn't happen.
Was a serious mistake, and I would say, at least from what I read in the Ipswich local news, the rationale for those 3 no votes was really embarrassingly wrong. That's an iconic intersection, and we don't want to change the feel of it, is a lovely, wrong-headed sentiment when you're talking about. And I think it's also a myth that a traffic light necessarily causes traffic backups. What you have now is traffic backups. So the light could only be status quo.
So
but it
you're
was
a
somebody
proponent?
else's money. It was $14 million. I don't know how much.
Yeah,
it was a
14
lot of
million,
money.
about that, yeah. And you're a proponent then of the light.
I would say reconfigure the heck out of that intersection. Take a bunch of good, 3D video beforehand so we can set up a museum to Five Corners that we can go back and remember. Maybe a virtual reality experience of Five Corners where you put on the equipment and then you wait in traffic for just to make your left-hand turn.
Why don't they do the study? Somebody commented in the paper, and I thought it was a great idea, is to put in, like, block off the spaces you're going to take away, and then put in a temporary traffic light, and then test it.
Yeah, good idea.
Right? Like, give a 90-day study,
Yeah.
and then see how it works out.
But all those prongs, Five Corners is a misnomer because there's like 9 corners or 10 corners there or whatever. It's like they counted up to 5 and said, well, let's just call it 5.
It's 5 streets.
It's exhausting.
Or
We're tired of
whatever.
counting corners.
I don't know.
So I don't know that just a test, that a test with the current configuration, a test of a traffic light with the current configuration of the roads would be true to the potential of the reconfiguration that could have happened and should happen. Wow. And I confess to being annoyed by this vote. Usually I go like, select board is a horrible job. I could not do it, would not do it. I salute the people who serve year after year and sit in meetings, and I couldn't stand the boredom and the annoyance and the citizens' queries. It's an awful job. God bless the people who serve. Usually give them the benefit of the doubt, but on this one, I'm like, nope, big mistake.
If you guys are listening, you better be aware that you're going to end up in Doug's column.
Well, and I like these people personally, So it's not that's the problem in a small town. It's like, these are my neighbors, these are my friends. I do business with these people, and then it's not like in Chicago where everybody's in government. It's like you don't know anybody.
Right. Okay. Well, that was a long strike of lightning, wasn't it? But and we're not done. Cool Whip. Dessert topping or floor cleaner?
Actually, Cool Whip is not only a really wonderful dessert topping, but just eating it with a spoon is a heavenly experience. I struggle with my weight, and I try to watch my calories, so I haven't indulged in spoon-fed Cool Whip in quite a long time. But
I'm one of those whipped cream, can whiffers.
Yes.
In the fridge, right?
Yeah.
And so that's my addiction. Occasionally.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste any of it on the floor cleaning, even if it was really good at cleaning floors.
True or false? It's been a long time since you've rock and rolled.
Well, that's true. It's technically, I'll be 70 in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be 70 years since I rock and rolled, because I was never a rocker, never a dancer.
What?
Never. No.
What are you, one of those old fogey, 20s?
Well, I came up in that Pentecostal church where dancing was a sin, unless you were slain in the spirit.
Were you in the movie with Kevin Bacon? In that movie?
And what?
You were in that movie with Kevin Bacon?
No. But that's the kind of life that I grew up in, and so you don't learn to dance.
That's interesting.
In fact,
okay.
it was a sin to go to the prom, to go to a dance.
Wow.
So, and I hasten to say they may have loosened their rules since then.
I would hope so.
But because I don't know, I'm many years since I have not been a part of that religious thinking. But I never learned to dance, and I married a woman who is a spectacular dancer, and we had the sad experience of realizing that we could never come together on this, because try as she might, she now will tell you that it was a hopeless cause.
Hopeless cause.
And to show you how this wounded me, the psychic wound that I bear to this day. In my second novel, Praying for Mrs. Mombasa, the guy can't dance, and he marries a brilliant dancer. And I worked out all of my anxiety in this character. And the novel won some awards, so I guess that was really it was more than just cleansing. It was people could relate.
So your kids are definitely saying, "Well, Mama can dance, and Daddy does not rock and roll."
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You know that song, so okay, you're a liar. You know some rock. All right.
That's our family.
Okay, bonus question. Bonus question.
You're embarrassed that you wrote this question.
No, I forgot. But anyway, here's the bonus question. Do you bank your daylight savings?
No. I'm trying to learn to be real chill. And so I don't, so I'm not storing anything up, not doing any of that Steely Dan. What is it? What? Storing up the tears and the years.
Oh, saving up
the years.
Reeling in the years.
Reeling in the years. Stowing away the time. Yeah. No. No, I can't say that I'm oriented that way. I'm trying to be just a let it go every day, do what you can, move on kind of guy. But do you realize that song is 50 years old?
Well, yeah.
Or more?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we're sitting here. And that's the power of art in our culture.
Sure.
It can imprint you and bake into you and stick with you and influence you half a century later, guide a conversation. You can take a turn in life because of something somebody says that was planted by someone in the arts a half a century ago. Phenomenal.
That is fantastic.
Let alone, the Renaissance and paintings that we still are moved by from centuries ago. So I'm pro arts.
And hopefully someone has learned some lyrics to some cool songs while we're at it. Okay, that was Doug Brendel, writer, doer, and accidental talent legend. If you want to read more of his work, check out outsider.com or visit dougbrendel.com to learn about his creative projects and humanitarian work. Oh, and also newthing.net. Don't forget that one. If you've never read his column, treat yourself. And don't be surprised to find yourself in solidarity. Now, if you're listening and thinking, I'm more interesting than that guy, you probably are, but I'm the host.
No question.
On the other hand, we're always looking for guests who know Ipswich, love Ipswich, or have at least bought a beach sticker at Town Hall. If that's you, reach out to guest@saneestate.com. Whether you are a local legend, quiet observer, or maybe a town meeting provocateur, we want to hear from you. Thanks for joining us on the Sane Estate. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and most of all, stay sane.